Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty essential, leading effectively, especially when like everything feels so unpredictable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're going to try to unpack this idea of warrior leadership and ownership-driven leadership. We're going to be looking at the work of leadership coach, author, and keynote speaker Claudio Chistè.
Yes?
This will be like your crash course into some pretty in-depth leadership principles.
That's right. And Claudia is not all theory-chist, right?
Yeah.
He's got this incredibly diverse background. I mean, he's
Yeah.
the CEO of the Center for Leadership and Coaching.
Right.
He's held a bunch of leadership positions, like within coaching and speaking associations down in South Africa, and he's a certified expert in NLP and life coaching. But what's really fascinating is his experience as a former combat officer in the South African Navy.
Yeah.
And his time in that like high-stakes finance world in London with Investec Bank.
Right.
He even headed up,
Yeah.
a pretty big industry network there. And then on top of that, he's got all this academic heft. Advanced degrees in science, commerce, military science.
It's a wild mix.
It is a fascinating mix.
Yeah, real world and deep study. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not your typical leadership guru, right?
No.
Like military discipline and then the world of finance.
Right.
It's interesting and it's so timely, right?
Yeah.
Because you think about what everybody's facing now, constant change pressure coming from every direction.
Yes.
And so Claudio's work, it feels like it speaks to that inner strength
Mm.
and effective action in this kind of crazy environment.
Absolutely.
So let's get into the core of his thinking, and that is the warrior ethos.
Yes.
And, I think when people hear warriors, it's easy to think of, like conflict and aggression.
Sure.
But Claudia is using this term in a much broader sense, right?
Absolutely he is. And, the warrior ethos, as he frames it, is not about, aggression in the traditional sense.
Right.
It's about a set of fundamental values
Yeah.
that kind of act as a bedrock for how we behave and how we lead others. And these are things like courage, not just like physical bravery, but
Right.
the courage to make difficult decisions.
Yeah.
To speak the truth, even when it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's about honor,
Yeah.
integrity, doing the right thing.
Okay.
Loyalty,
Mhm.
loyalty to your team, to the mission, to your values.
Right.
Discipline, the self-mastery to stay focused and effective.
Mm.
Resilience, so the ability to bounce back from setbacks.
Yeah.
And selflessness, putting the needs of the team and the mission ahead of your own ego.
Wow. Okay. So these are powerful ideas.
They are.
But how do you go from values to actual, like, practical leadership?
Right.
And I think that's where this idea of ownership-driven leadership comes in. And
Yeah.
this is like the actual application
It is the
of
how-to.
the ethos, right?
Exactly.
Ah.
And the central framework for that is what Claudio calls the ownership triad. And it's a three-part approach to taking responsibility
Okay.
and leading with genuine impact.
Let's break down this triad. First element is owning who you are. What does that look like, actually?
Owning who you are goes beyond just doing like a basic self-assessment, right?
Right.
It's a really deep level of self-acceptance. It's acknowledging your strengths and, crucially, your weaknesses,
Right.
but doing it without judgment. And it's about this continuous self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Asking yourself, are you truly aware of like your default leadership style?
Right.
How do you react when you're under pressure? And understanding these aspects of yourself is like the first step
Yeah.
to leading authentically
Right.
and effectively.
You have to know yourself.
It's like knowing the instrument
Yeah.
before you conduct the orchestra.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
You can't lead others if you're not in tune with yourself.
Precisely.
So that's part one. What's the second part of the triad?
So the second part is owning the mission.
Okay.
And this is where we see this really interesting duality of the leader as both a servant and a warrior. So as a steward leader, you're focused on nurturing the growth and potential in your team.
Okay.
You're providing support, guidance.
Yeah.
You're investing in their development. But the warrior aspect means that you're also fiercely committed to the mission.
Right.
You're ready to tackle obstacles.
Mm.
You're ready to defend the goals.
Yeah.
It's about being adaptable,
Yeah.
knowing when to empower and when to step in and drive things forward.
So it's a dynamic role. You're not just passively supporting, you're actively championing
Yes.
the cause, but also looking out for your people.
Yes.
And the final piece of the puzzle is owning the result.
Right.
What does that entail?
So owning the result is about taking complete accountability
Okay.
for outcomes, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Right.
But it's not just about individual responsibility. It's about fostering this no-blame culture
Okay.
within a team or organization.
So when things go wrong.
Yeah, when things go wrong,
Yeah.
the focus shifts from who to punish to what can we learn from this?
Right.
How can we improve?
That makes sense.
And that kind of environment encourages transparency,
Yeah.
innovation, and a collective drive for better results.
It's a huge difference, right? Because a culture of blame, that just stops growth.
It can really stifle it, yeah.
Yeah. Risk-taking.
Yeah.
So now Claudio has also written a book,
Yes.
Rise of the Warrior Leader.
Yes.
How do these concepts play out in the book?
So the book really unpacks these ideas in a lot more detail.
Okay.
Offering practical frameworks, real-world examples drawn from his experiences. And one key theme that really comes out is the importance of self-reflection as the foundation for leadership growth.
Yeah.
It's not about following a rigid set of rules.
Right.
It's about understanding yourself.
Yeah.
And then applying these principles in a way that aligns with your strengths and the specific context that you're in.
So it's not one size fits all. You have to internalize it.
It is not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
It is about internalizing these ideas,
Yeah.
making them your own.
Absolutely. So what else does the book delve into?
So given the constant upheaval that we all face, the book places a strong emphasis on cultivating mental resilience.
Okay.
It provides strategies for developing that inner toughness that you need to navigate uncertainty and pressure without burning out. It's about building your capacity to not just withstand challenges,
Right.
but to learn and grow from them.
That's so relevant for right now because everyone's being asked to adapt and persevere constantly.
Absolutely.
So what else is in the book?
Well, what's particularly insightful, I think, is the emphasis on building trust and psychological safety within teams, what Claudio calls holding the space. And he argues that in today's volatile and complex environments, these VUCA environments, that creating a sense of security and trust is paramount. Even more so than just having a compelling vision. People need to feel safe, to take risks, to voice their opinions, to be vulnerable. And this actually contrasts with some traditional leadership models that prioritize, top-down vision casting.
That makes a lot of sense, though, because I think people are more likely to contribute their best work when they feel supported.
Exactly.
And secure.
Yeah, and the book culminates in this idea of inspire ownership-driven leadership.
Okay.
And this is where the selfless leader truly emerges, viewing their team members not as subordinates, but as fellow stakeholders in the mission.
Right.
And in times of crisis, this mindset fosters this feeling of collective responsibility.
Yeah.
Where everyone understands that the preservation of the whole is ultimately in their own best interest.
Right.
It brings us full circle back to that ownership triad. Own who you are, own the mission, own the result, but now amplified across the entire team.
So it starts with the individual leader and then it radiates outward to the team and the organization.
Yeah.
So now Claudio also shares his expertise as a keynote speaker.
He did.
What kind of themes does he cover in those presentations? Are there any surprising angles he takes?
Well, his keynotes really bring these concepts to life with practical applications.
Okay.
So for example, in Mental Toughness of a Warrior, he goes beyond just, talking about resilience, and it provides concrete strategies for cultivating that inner warrior.
Right.
He emphasizes the importance of overcoming a victim mentality.
Okay.
And focusing on achieving small victories every day, what he calls daily micro goals.
I like that.
Yeah.
Micro goals.
It's powerful because, it's a reminder that progress isn't always about these giant leaps.
Right.
It's often about consistent small steps. And it counters that desire for instant results.
Absolutely.
And reinforces that significant achievements take time.
Yes.
And consistent effort.
And that's a huge thing because I think so many people, want it now.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
Yeah, I love that emphasis on micro goals. It makes this idea of building mental toughness.
Yeah.
It makes it feel achievable.
It does. It feels manageable.
Yeah. So what about his other keynotes?
Well, another key presentation is From a Servant to a Warrior, Embracing Ownership-Driven Leadership.
Okay.
And this one tackles the often perceived conflict between being a supportive servant leader and a decisive, action-oriented leader. And Claudio argues it's not an either situation.
Okay.
It's a dynamic balance. It's about understanding when to nurture and when to push.
Right.
adapting your leadership style to the specific context and challenges you're facing.
So knowing when to shift gears as a leader.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And his keynote on ownership-driven leadership for effective leadership in a changing world.
Okay.
That directly addresses this core challenge many leaders face today, navigating constant uncertainty.
Yeah.
And he positions ownership as the key to not just surviving, but thriving in this environment.
Right.
Fostering accountability, resilience, even sparking innovation within teams.
That makes sense.
And when individuals and teams take ownership,
Yeah.
they're more likely to be proactive
Right.
and find solutions in the face of all this ambiguity.
It really resonates with the current business landscape.
Absolutely. And then finally, his keynote on creating an organizational culture based on ownership and performance.
Okay.
That delves into the practical steps organizations can take to embed these principles. At a systemic level, he discusses how to cultivate a culture where individuals feel a sense of personal responsibility.
Right.
Where expectations are clear.
Right.
Feedback is constructive, collaboration is encouraged, and individual goals are aligned with the overall organizational objectives.
Okay.
And this provides tangible strategies for leaders looking to build high-performing, ownership-driven teams.
So whether you're looking at individual development, team dynamics, or organizational culture, there's a lot there.
There's a lot of valuable insights there.
Yeah, and we noticed some mentions of your work in news and podcasts. Can you give us a little glimpse into how these ideas are being shared more broadly?
Yeah, so the Rise of the Warrior Leader podcast, for example, explores these concepts in a very accessible way. We've covered, topics ranging from the foundational elements of mental toughness to the surprising ways music can be used for positive change. We've dedicated episodes specifically to unpacking ownership-driven leadership. We've explored the power of your voice as a leader, the importance of backing yourself and your decisions.
That's interesting.
And for anyone who wants to start exploring, episode 1 provides a great introduction to those core principles.
That's good advice. And we also saw this brief mention of a news story.
Yes.
About a team placing a plaque in honor of the SS Meandi.
Yes.
We won't go into all the details here.
Yeah.
But it seems like a powerful example of courage, loyalty, and resilience.
It is.
Those core warrior ethos values in action.
It absolutely is. It's a stark reminder that these principles aren't just abstract theories.
Yeah.
They manifest in tangible ways, often in the face of significant adversity.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
What are the key things that you hope our listener will take away?
From our conversation about Claudio Chistè's work, I think the most important takeaway is the power of starting with yourself.
Oh.
That fundamental act of self-reflection and truly owning who you are as a leader.
Right.
Building upon that, embracing the warrior ethos with its core values of courage, honor, loyalty, discipline, resilience, and selflessness provides a robust ethical framework for your leadership. And finally, understanding and actively applying the ownership triad, owning yourself, the mission, and the result, offers a practical roadmap for leading effectively and navigating the complexities of today's world.
And I also think that encouragement to focus on daily micro goals, especially when it comes to building mental toughness.
Absolutely.
That's really accessible advice for everyone listening.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that meaningful change often starts with small, consistent efforts.
Exactly. Progress, not perfection.
So, listener, as you consider all of this, here's a thought to take with you. How could consciously focusing on just one of the warrior ethos values, perhaps practicing greater discipline in your daily routine, or actively embracing one aspect of the ownership triad, maybe taking more complete ownership of a specific project outcome, how could that positively impact your current challenges or aspirations?
That's a good question.
And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to explore Claudio Chistè's book, Rise of the Warrior Leader, or his podcast for a much deeper understanding of these leadership principles.
And if you'd like to connect with Claudio directly, or learn more about his work, you can find all his contact information, website, phone, email, and social media links easily accessible online.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's provided you with some valuable insights into a fresh perspective on leadership.
We hope you enjoyed it.
We look forward to our next exploration together.
See you then.
Bye.